At 75 years old, recovering from hip surgery, I hired a caregiver named Jessica to help me around the house. Within 3 months, she'd stolen my jewelry, forged checks totaling $80,000, and convinced my bank to make her my power of attorney. She thought I was too weak and medicated to notice. What Jessica didn't know was that I'm a retired accountant with a photographic memory for numbers. The moment I realized what she'd done, I set a trap. This is the story of how I caught her red-handed and sent her to prison for 7 years. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell icon so you never miss revenge stories like this. My name is Barbara Williams, and I'm 75 years old. Last year, I had hip replacement surgery and needed help around the house during recovery. My daughter Rachel lives in California, so she couldn't be there daily. That's when we hired Jessica Martinez through a home care agency. Jessica was 32, had good references, and seemed competent. She'd help me with daily tasks, drive me to appointments, and manage household chores. For the first month, everything was fine. Jessica was helpful and friendly. She'd make me lunch, help me with physical therapy exercises, and keep me company. I'm a widow. My husband Frank died 6 years ago, leaving me comfortable financially. We'd saved carefully throughout our lives, and between our investments, savings, and Frank's pension, I had about $1.2 million in assets. Jessica knew I was well off. She'd seen my financial statements when helping me organize paperwork. She'd driven me to the bank. She knew I had valuable jewelry from Frank, pieces worth over $100,000. What I didn't know was that Jessica was planning to steal it all. 2 months into Jessica's employment, I started noticing things missing. Small things at first: a gold bracelet Frank had given me, a diamond ring I rarely wore. When I asked Jessica about them, she'd say, "Oh, maybe you misplaced them. You've been on pain medication." She was right that I'd been on medication after surgery, but I wasn't confused. I knew where I kept my jewelry, and pieces were definitely missing. Then I noticed my checkbook wasn't where I'd left it. When I asked Jessica, she said she'd put it somewhere safe but couldn't remember where. I found it 3 days later in her bag. When I confronted her, she acted shocked. "Oh my gosh, Mrs. Williams. I must have accidentally grabbed it when I was organizing your desk. I'm so sorry." It seemed plausible, but something felt off. I started paying closer attention. I noticed Jessica would often help me with paperwork, offering to write checks for bills while I was resting. She'd ask me to sign documents saying they were for insurance or medical forms. One day, while Jessica was in the kitchen, I checked my checkbook register. The last 5 checks I'd supposedly written didn't match my handwriting. The signatures looked like mine, but they weren't. Someone had forged my signature. And there was only one person who had access to my checkbook. I'm 75 years old, but I spent 40 years as an accountant. I know how to track money, and I know fraud when I see it. I called my bank and requested copies of all checks cleared in the past 2 months. What I discovered made my blood boil. 15 checks totaling $80,000, all made out to cash or to Jessica Martinez, all with forged signatures. Jessica had been systematically stealing from me, forging checks while I was medicated and recovering from surgery. But it got worse. I also discovered that Jessica had convinced a bank employee, by claiming to be my daughter, to add her name to one of my accounts as power of attorney. The paperwork had my signature, but I'd never signed it. Jessica had forged that too. With power of attorney, Jessica could access my accounts, make withdrawals, and transfer money. She'd been planning to drain my entire savings. I could have called the police immediately, but I'm not just an accountant. I'm a strategic thinker. I wanted to catch Jessica in the act with undeniable proof. So I set a trap. I pretended nothing was wrong. I acted like the confused, medicated old woman Jessica thought I was. "Jessica, dear, I need to write a check for my property taxes," I said one afternoon. "Could you help me?" "My hands are shaking." "Of course, Mrs. Williams," Jessica said, her eyes lighting up with opportunity. I had her write a check for $15,000, made out to the county tax office. I signed it in front of her, my real signature this time. What Jessica didn't know was that I'd already set up security cameras in my office and living room. Hidden cameras that recorded everything. The next day, while I was supposedly napping, Jessica went into my office. The cameras caught her opening my checkbook, writing another check to herself for $10,000, and carefully forging my signature. She'd gotten good at it. The signature looked almost perfect. But it wasn't mine. I had her on video committing forgery and theft. But I wanted more. I wanted to catch her trying to access my accounts. 2 days later, Jessica announced she needed to help me go to the bank to organize some accounts. She drove me to the bank, helped me inside, and brought me to a private office with a banker. Mrs. Williams needs to set up some transfers, Jessica told the banker as if I couldn't speak for myself. She's not feeling well, so I'll handle the paperwork. The banker looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Williams, are you sure you want to make these transfers? This was my moment. What transfers? I asked clearly, no longer pretending to be confused. Jessica's face went pale. The ones we discussed, remember? For your medical expenses? I don't remember discussing any transfers. What exactly are you trying to do? The banker pulled up the paperwork Jessica had prepared. She'd been trying to transfer $400,000 from my savings account to an account in her name. I never authorized this, I said firmly, and I never gave this woman power of attorney. Jessica tried to backtrack. Mrs. Williams, you're confused from your medication. We discussed this yesterday. I'm not confused. I'm calling the police. You've been forging checks and stealing from me for months. Jessica's expression changed from fake concern to rage. You senile old bitch. You gave me that money. You said I could have it. Really? Then why did you forge my signature? Why did you do it behind my back? The security cameras at my house recorded everything. Jessica ran. She literally ran out of the bank. But she didn't get far. Police arrested Jessica at her apartment 2 hours later. They found my jewelry, pieces worth over $100,000, hidden in her closet. They found forged checks. They found paperwork with practice signatures matching mine. The detective investigating the case, Detective Martinez, told me this was a common scam. Caregivers target elderly people, especially those on medication or recovering from surgery. They gain trust, then steal everything. You're lucky you caught on when you did. How much did she steal total? From the checks and jewelry? About $180,000. The criminal trial took place 6 months later. Jessica pleaded not guilty, claiming I'd given her permission for everything and was now having memory problems. But the prosecution had overwhelming evidence. Video footage of her forging checks, bank records showing unauthorized transactions, testimony from the banker about the attempted $400,000 transfer expert analysis proving the signatures were forgeries. My jewelry found in her possession I testified clearly and competently, destroying her confused elderly woman defense. The jury convicted her on 12 counts of fraud, forgery, theft, and elder abuse. The judge sentenced Jessica to 7 years in state prison and ordered her to pay full restitution of $180,000. Ms. Martinez, the judge said, you targeted a vulnerable elderly woman during her recovery from surgery. You betrayed her trust and attempted to steal her life savings. This behavior is reprehensible. I hope this sentence serves as a warning to others who prey on elderly people. After Jessica's conviction, I made some changes. I hired a new caregiver through a different agency, one that does extensive background checks. I also set up additional security measures and safeguards on my accounts. Most importantly, I started volunteering with a local organization that educates elderly people about caregiver fraud. I share my story at community centers, warning others about the signs I missed. Don't trust blindly, I tell audiences. Even if someone seems helpful and kind, verify everything. Check your accounts regularly. Never give anyone power of attorney without consulting family and a lawyer first. Jessica tried to appeal her conviction, claiming the sentence was too harsh. The appeal was denied. She's now 3 years into her 7-year sentence. She wrote me a letter last year, apologizing and asking if I'd support her parole application. I didn't respond. Some people tell me I should forgive her, that she was desperate or made mistakes. But Jessica didn't make mistakes. She systematically planned to steal from a vulnerable, elderly woman. She forged my signature dozens of times. She tried to steal $400,000. She only stopped because I caught her. If I'd been truly confused from medication, if I hadn't noticed the missing jewelry and forged checks, Jessica would have taken everything Frank and I worked 40 years to build. She earned every day of that prison sentence. I'm 75 years old. I've lived through a lot, raising children, building a career, losing my husband. I thought hiring Jessica was just getting help during recovery. Instead, it was almost the biggest mistake of my life. Elder financial abuse is a massive problem. Caregivers, family members, and friends steal billions from elderly people every year. They target people who are vulnerable, isolated, or cognitively impaired. But I wasn't impaired. I was just recovering from surgery. And the moment I realized what Jessica was doing, I fought back. Being 75 doesn't mean being helpless. It means having 75 years of life experience, including 40 years of accounting knowledge. Jessica underestimated me because of my age. She thought medication and surgery made me an easy target. She was wrong. And now she's spending 7 years in prison, learning that elderly doesn't mean stupid. Vulnerable doesn't mean defenseless, and trust doesn't mean blind. I'm still here, living independently in the home Frank and I shared. I'm healthy, active, and more careful about who I trust. And Jessica? She's in a cell, thinking about the elderly woman who outsmarted her.